Morning, Knicks Nation. Today is Thursday, the 23rd day of May 2024. I hope this Thursday finds you safe and healthy. I hope this Thursday finds your family safe and healthy with your loved ones. And that the needs of you and your family, your loved ones, in terms of food, shelter, clothing, as well as health, are being met today. Blessings upon those that work in the healthcare field, along with the first responders who every day are out here saving lives. Those also that pick up garbage to keep our places clean, and those that make deliveries of things such as food, water, people, and mail for our convenience. Double blessings upon the men and women out here trying to help rescue, deliver, and recover teenagers and children who are the victims of child molestation and pedophilia. People that are also victims of prostitution and child prostitution, pornography, child pornography, human trafficking, and sex slavery, and double curses on the perpetrators of these things, those who profit from these things, and the perverts that create the demand for these things. Finally, double blessings on the homeless. Nearly 600,000 men, women, and children homeless in the United States of America, and millions of people around the world, families, veterans, in worse conditions. Blessings upon them, for theirs is the kingdom. Today, I want to just step back for a second because I see this every year, and now that I have a channel, I can express it and maybe help. And that's what I'm looking to do, help. And I mean help for my brethren and sisters in Knicks Nation. Every summer, every single year, at the close of every Knicks season, there's a plethora of false rumors that are being propagated by people with big platforms and influence. And they feed into Knicks Nation and drive y'all into confusion. This is what I need y'all to understand. One of the things I love about getting Leon Rose, who I named the Don, and still will call him the Don because he's like Corleone in the NBA world. What I like about him is he's thinking several steps ahead. Not one or two, several years ahead. And so when you're looking at what the Knicks are going to do, you must take certain things as givens. For example, in my belief, and this is the thing, I've many of you will testify, I have my hands on the pulse of the Knicks for a while. Since Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau took over, I've had my hands pretty much on the pulse of what they're thinking and what they're doing. And why do I do that? Not because I'm a prophet, but because that's sound organizational development and basketball wisdom and knowledge that they have. And that's a premise I use going into Tom Thibodeau and Leon Rose in my thought process. Having saw successful organizations in the past with the San Antonio Spurs, the Boston Celtics, the Miami Heat, so on and so forth, having seen basis of what successful organizations do, how they think, how they develop, how they think long term, I started to apply those principles to the Knicks because I knew that Tom Thibodeau and Leon Rose would eventually do it, and they have. So we premise with that premise, we understand, even though Jalen Brunson is not satisfied with the season, and you want that from Jalen Brunson, the Knicks as an organization know they just had a very successful season. There is no pressure from James Dolan to do anything. There is no sudden haste to do anything stupid. They're on a path of long-term sustainable winning. They have achieved a new culture. They're not going to mess with that. So you take that as the bottom line premise, and you will understand they're not going to try to make huge changes to this team, especially when you're looking at a team where your oldest rotational piece at this point is Julius Randle at age 30 in his prime. So you want to let that roll, but you want to plan for the future, okay, going forward. So in terms of the team as you have it now, you want to take that and see if you could build on it. And sometimes it requires present time tweaks, but future time moves. You cannot allow the media and people on big platforms that want clicks to think for you to think like you're playing checkers. This has been chess from the beginning. Okay, from the time Leon Rose took over, it's been chess. So we have to think chess, several moves ahead. Okay? So, with that in mind, what the Don does is he creates several options, A through D usually. And then he allows the atmosphere and the environment to dictate which option he chooses. He doesn't force any option, but he has several options. For example, I had a subscriber, a guy, and I love my subscriber. This subscriber suggested that Deuce wouldn't be playing if people didn't get hurt. And I said, no, that's not correct. The moment Emmanuel Quickly did not sign the extension with the Knicks, it was Deuce time. And it was no coincidence that the same weekend they traded Emmanuel Quickly, they extended Deuce. If Quick had signed an extension, Deuce would be traded. That's the way Leon has it. He has the game set so that if it goes this way, he can make this move. If it goes that way, he can make that move. That's how he operates. So, we have talked about Mikal Bridges. Okay? Obviously, many of us understand the addition of such a one would enhance the Knicks. But at what cost, of course? If it's mostly draft capital, and then maybe Bodega 44's salary with Alec Burks expired, now you done. You good. Okay, if it's mostly draft capital, because the Knicks got a ton of draft capital. 2 number ones this year, 3 next year, plus second round picks. They got a ton of draft capital. So they can give them 4 picks, 5 picks if they want. They can give that to them if they want. Now, that being the case, the Knicks have that option. Option A. If then depends, and it also depends on the Nets. And I also mentioned Alex Caruso. We'll talk about him in a second, but it also depends on the Nets. If the Nets are trading, just general, if the Nets are trading Mikal Bridges, it means the Nets are committed to a rebuild. If you're not committed to a rebuild, you do not trade Mikal Bridges. You build around him. Okay? If they're committed to a rebuild, which I've been saying from the time they let KD out of here and the big so-called 3 they had, it was time to commit to a rebuild. Go back to the Kenny Atkinson days. That's my thought process. They decided to prolong this a minute and prolong their agony. And that's what they got now. Agony. Okay? So if they trade Mikal Bridges, they're committed to a rebuild. One of the foundational principles of NBA rebuild is draft capital. You get draft capital, you got more opportunities to strike and get high level talent. No matter if it's top of the draft, bottom of the draft. Kawhi Leonard came at the bottom of the draft. Okay, many stars come out the top of the draft like Luka Doncic. So you want to have draft capital up and down. So you can pick. Look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. That team is made up of draft picks that they developed. Okay, that's the goal. So now you're talking about what is the Nets going to do? If they're going to rebuild, okay, then Mikal Bridges becomes available. If they're not going to rebuild, that option's off the table. Same with the Chicago Bulls. I feel like Alex Caruso, who is just named second team All-NBA defense again, is the type of player that will come off the Knicks bench and make the Knicks bench even more dynamic. Add to what you already have. Probably he'd be replacing Precious, okay? But that also depends on a couple of factors. That depends on what's Chicago. Chicago Bulls are a mess. Okay? They committed to Zach LaVine. They got to pay him over $40 million for the next couple of seasons. They committed to Lonzo Ball, which I thought was a mistake. A lot of here, and Knicks are calling for us to go get Lonzo Ball. We need a point guard. Look at that. It's a mess. And they got to still pay him. And then you got Vucevic, who's not been completely a success either. So they've hardly had this team together. They're a mess. If I'm Chicago, and I want a long-term sustainable winner, and this is the premise I'm making, I don't know what they want. I clean house. I get rid of all them guys, even if I have to pay to get rid of them, and I start over. Okay? Because the problem is they built a foundation of what they thought was a long-term sustainable winner on players that are unreliable, and they overpaid them. Which is what I'm trying to tell some of y'all in Knicks Nation, the Don ain't gonna do. Okay? So all y'all there's going to be a whole bandwagon of people begging for us to go get Zach LaVine. Forget it. Forget it. DeMar DeRozan, forget it. I seen articles, DeMar DeRozan no. Don't fit. The glove don't fit. So I quit. Next. So now that's an option depending on the Bulls. If the Bulls decide to go into rebuilding, to completely tear the thing down and start over, which I would suggest they do, Caruso becomes available. He's only guaranteed $3 million for next season. You can get him. Okay, you can get him cheap. You can get him for the deal he's on now is a mid-level exception deal, 9.6 a year. Now the mid-level is 12.8. He can get that. The Knicks can give him that. Okay, but depends on what the Bulls do. See, so now option A is there. This is, I would say, A. This is option 1. This would be option 1A. Now you move to option 2, the draft. And even within the options of the draft, there are multiple options. Don't want to confuse y'all, but this is how it works. If they decide, that is the Knicks, to go in any draft pick, some of y'all still ain't getting this. Ain't no draft pick playing this year. And some of y'all call it being buried on the bench. You don't understand NBA basketball, and you surely don't understand the New York Knicks culture. Any draft pick is not going to play this year. That guy is going to be developed for 2 years from now. So he could be Deuce McBride 2 years from now. Okay? So you got your team now. You don't need nobody to come in and try to make the rotation. It ain't going to happen. The only guy that's got a chance to make the rotation that ain't in it right now is Jacob Toppin. Okay? And he's in the development module right now. So this summer is a pretty big summer for Jacob. So we'll see what happens, but that's another story. So now if they're going to draft, they're looking future. And how the Don does his drafts is he looks for the most talent at the cheapest price. He ain't moving up to get nobody. The way he thinks, there's a marginal difference between one NBA player and another. Very few of them are generational talented Doncic type superstars. So he ain't worried about hitting the home run. He just wants to get a solid base hit. So he wants an NBA player that he can get cheap. Quentin Grimes, Deuce McBride. He's looking for that. So don't think he's going to move up and get anybody. If somebody rises up the draft board, that means they done rose up into the clouds above where the Don going to reach. Now, yesterday we talked about Duran, right? We talked about Duran yesterday. And I like Duran. Given what I know the Don likes, this guy fits 2 years from now. But there's also a few other players, four other players, that if he was going to choose one in the first round, which I think he might because he got 2 first-round picks, he might trade one for the future and use one. Okay, there you go. Then you could also get a guy like a Osu Iguodala who's going to cost you nothing. He might not even get drafted. You could bring him in as an undrafted free agent. Or you could draft him in the 40s or late 30s. And that's not going to cost you nothing. Now you got 2 guys that you can build in the G League for 2 years from now. Okay? That's if they decide to do that. Okay? They may not. If they go to Mikal Bridges' route, they're not going to draft anybody. They're going to trade those picks. Okay? But that's option 2. You understand? Then you got option 3. Well, what's option 3? You might decide to round out your bench. You can't get Caruso. What about Sadiq Bey? You might look at it as Sadiq Bey. Option 3. Okay? Let's see what he got. Maybe he's another Villanova cat. Maybe he steps in for Bodega. That $19 million out, $10 million from Burks out. Some of y'all still don't get that. I think Bodega got like $3 million guaranteed for next year. So let's call it 16 and 10, $26, $27 million of space these 2 cats create. You might be able to get a Sadiq Bey, mid-level exception. Bring him in. He ain't costing you no draft capital. Mid-level exception. Bring him in. You got a nice Villanova crew already. You just add it to it. You know he plays basketball the right way. He's not as good, in my view, as Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso, all NBA defense now. But solid player. Option 3. And it continues. And so as the marketplace moves, it will dictate what option the Knicks will take. Now I'm going to bring a 4th option, which we'll talk about in more detail. Bodega 44. Who I had named Bodega 44 bum in the beginning. And rightfully so. But the dude did get acclimated to coming off the bench at the end and was very effective in the second unit. See, right now, what y'all need to understand is the second unit is about 90% set right now. What do I mean? Your second unit is Mitchell Robinson, okay? Mitchell Robinson, your second unit, Deuce McBride, and Josh Hart. That's your bench. You want a fourth guy because Tibbs does play a 9-man rotation. So right now it's Precious, but if they want Precious, that's who you got, because Precious can not only back up Juju, he could also be a third center if you want. But if you're very confident in Jericho Sims, then you may not need Precious. And Jericho Sims is signed. Done. $3 million a year. Done. Not done. Okay, so you got him. So you might want Precious, you might not. Or you might use that money for Sadiq. Or you decide to use that money and continue to keep Bodega. Why? Why would they pay $19 million for next year? Why would they do that? Because next summer, see, this summer you're going to extend Jalen Brunson. Then next summer you got to talk about Julius Randle. Be nice to have $19 million cleared off your books next summer. Option 4. And I'm just giving you an example. I'm not in the Knicks front office. I know how they think, but I'm not there. And I'm telling you, this is how the game works. To me, the number one option, the number one plan one, is get Mikal Bridges. And get him for draft capital and a couple of salaries if you can. Option 1A, Alex Caruso. Option B, draft. And then within the draft, you want a first round pick. What you going to trade the second round pick? You trade the other first round pick for a future first. Then you got a second round. You might be able to get something cheap like an Oso Iguodala, or some of you guys like Edie. Okay, you might be able to get an Edie, or you might be able to get Iguodala, and you move from there. And there's a couple other guys I'm gonna go over. But maybe 2-3 other guys I'm gonna go over during the course of time going forward. But for today, we're talking about chess, not checkers. So, for today's lesson, just as a review, the Knicks play chess. Don't let the media cause you to think it's checkers. The Knicks always have multiple options. They don't commit to any one option. The closest you saw them doing that was when they went after Jalen Brunson. They went hard after Jalen Brunson, if you recall. After Dallas stupidly did not extend that brother, the Knicks were all over him. First signing his father as an assistant coach, then showing up at his games. It cost them a second round pick, which we don't care about. We got so many picks. We got a lot of picks. We got a lot more. So they lost the second round pick. So what? We got Jalen Brunson, who we signed for $100 million, who's now worth $200 million, who's going to sign for an extension about $156 million. Deal of the century, because the Don knows how to play checkers. That's about the closest you will get to them really looking even a little desperate about getting somebody, which I was not, and I'd say most of us was not saying. Why are you doing that for Jalen Brunson? That's what? Yep. Now you look back and you say, Dad, y'all hit that nail on the head, right? So don't let the media and getting your clicks cause you to think checkers when the Don is playing chess. And I just gave you 4 levels of it. He might have more. You'll enjoy your Thursday. Shalom.